Okay, gang, we're back with George Durkee, video 6, Geography 61, where we're going to continue setting up a fire incident map using ArcGIS Pro. And here I'll take you through a few more housekeeping steps, and then we'll create a layout view and print the map. I was kind of hoping to share the map to ArcGIS Online. My guess is this will go on a little too long, so there will likely be a video 7. Okay, onward. Open your map if it's not already open. And when I just did mine, there was a little pop-up that came up saying that I could update ArcGIS Pro. And you probably want to do that, although keep in mind that sometimes it's a whole app update and it takes a while. So if you got other stuff to do, don't worry about it. Just reopen it later when you have time. So there's just a couple of more symbols I want to add, and also I want to point out when I was doing some mapping, my catalog pane disappeared, and you can regain it by going to View and then going to Catalog pane. You can also get a full catalog view, so it comes up in an entirely different tab. Okay, back to our map. So we're going to go into edit mode, and we're going to draw a dozer line, and we're going to draw one more division point symbol, because these are pretty far apart, so it'd be nice to have one up here. So I'm back in edit mode. We go to create, we lock it open, and now that we've symbolized everything, we can actually just highlight the symbol itself and it'll draw that. And so this, as you remember, is the line feature where you go point by point, and this is the freehand tool. And once again, I just want you to draw something. Here's a road here, so let's tie it in with that. So I'm just going to start drawing here, bring it across the ridge down here, which would never happen, and then down this ridge here, and then single click to end it. And also, we're going to draw, as I said, another division break. And so I'd go to the drop down of MOC points and click over division break and the single point. And let's put it here. And let's clear it, see what it looks like. And aha, notice that that's not perpendicular. So let's go to the angle tool, and we're still in edit mode, so we can do that right now. So let's go to modify. That is locked into place, good news. Rotate, and we want to select it. Back to rotate. And let's bring it to there. Clear it. And now we save all our edits. Okay, there we go. This is not one of the greater maps we'll ever make, but it's set up enough that I think we can just go with it. Once again, I just want you guys to get used to using some of the editing tools and drawing a real basic map. And of course, get an idea of what goes into incident mapping, the workflow, and so on and so forth. So now let's get out of editing mode, unclick there, back to the map. Now notice in the lower left here, I've got it at 1 to 24,000, and that's the standard size of a USGS 24K topographic map. The paper maps, as I said earlier, that most field people are used to. So go ahead and set it at that, and let's save. And also for here, it's not a bad idea to create a bookmark. Oop, a bookmark, I say. Beep. And from here, it's not a bad idea to create a bookmark at 1 to 24K. So we're going to call this map 1 to 24K. So we can always come back to that if things get out of control or we lose our place in the map. Now let's create a layout. Let's get rid of the modify features pane. Now let's create a layout, and for that we go to insert. Now a layout is what you do preparatory to printing a map. That's what the map will actually look like when you print it. You decide on the paper size, orientation, and whether you want it real live paper off a printer or whether you want it PDF. So with that, we go to insert and we go to, here's where you choose your size. I'm going to choose legal size 8.5 by 14. That gives us a little more space here, and it is PDF, so it's not super critical because we don't need to have the printer type that will print at that size. And you also decide between portrait and landscape mode, and that's decided by the orientation of your map and what fits in better. And so we kind of have an east to west orientation here. Is longer, and so a landscape might be a little better. So I'm choosing that. You guys can fool around and decide what works best. In any event, then you come up on a blank piece of paper essentially, and you draw in where the map's going to be in the paper. And there are cases when you might want beep. So once you've chosen your paper size, a blank piece of paper with the mark showing the size here comes up, and then you want to insert a map frame into that. So that's whatever map you want to put on that piece of paper. So notice we have my bookmark here, 1 to 24K, and we also have what the map was last at. So it doesn't matter. Let's do the bookmark. And what you actually do is you draw in where the map's going to be. And it could be that you want to leave some border space on the left, and for that you'd put in text and explanatory stuff as a whole nother text box or something like that. But for the moment I'm going to fill the page mostly with the map. And once again, let's save, because this is pretty much what we want. And let's see. Looking at the map, you decide what you want to label everything. And notice that, for instance, I put in that division break, but I didn't put in a label for it. So let's go back and do that. We'll do this from the map and bring up the points attribute table. And back to our favorite edit mode. Beep, beep. And let's put in division 4 here. And notice that because we re-angled it, it actually puts in the angle right here. So and here's, I don't know, here's an extra little point here, and I highlight it. Let's flash it. Okay, I think we can delete that. That's what I was talking about earlier, that occasionally something shows up that you didn't draw or you don't remember drawing. So let's get rid of that. And now let's save our edits and exit edit mode. Get rid of the points, zoom back in. And actually, let's set it up from our bookmark. I'll show you how that brings us back. So there's our bookmark, and then just readjusts it to where we created that bookmark. Now let's just go back to layout and get a sense of how all this is going to look on paper and whether the size is good or not. So looking at the label sizes here, they could be a little bit bigger, but just to be sure, let's look at them at the actual size they're going to be on the map, and we can do that. So we want to see what the labels look like at 100%, just to see what they'll look like on the actual printed map. So a couple of ways you can do that. Down here on the lower bar, you actually have the zoom level, and so we could just go to 100%. We were at 91%, so there's not much difference. But you can also use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out, and it'll zoom in and out on the entire map. But you can also go over here to layout, and this gives you navigation tools that apply only to your layout view. So you can actually just move the entire map back and forth, or you can look at it at 1:1, which is 100%, or you can use the magnifying glass here and hold down the shift key, and you can zoom in on a specific area. Then also notice you've got the previous extent, so that'll take you back to your previous extent. You can go back and forth like that. And yet another cool tool, I guess, is the page width. So that'll show the entire width of the page within the frame you have there. So the size isn't bad, and as I've shown you elsewhere, you can fool around with the colors, but actually against the green background, those seem to work. One thing that we do want to change here are the division labels, so they should be in between the division markers rather than right on the markers. And then looking at the Mokefire origin here, that's a little crowded up against the ICP, so we probably want to change that. And you can change some of that stuff within your symbology adjustments, but what we're going to do is we're going to convert it to graphics and then move them individually. It'll convert every label to a graphic, and then we can move it. So what we do for that is we want to change to graphics the points. So you go down to points, you right click, and you go to convert labels and convert to graphics. And a geoprocessing pane comes up. Lock that into place. And your input map is just called map, although we could rename it. Just going to work on the single layer rather than all layers in the map, and just the points. Except the defaults here, you could rename the output layer and then just run. And it tells you it completed successfully. Sometimes you get a little red box there that something messed up, and then you have to troubleshoot and figure out what went wrong. So you notice now that that added a new layer in the table of contents over here called Group Graphics and your MOOC point graphics. So let's get the geoprocessing pane out of the way. And now what we want to do is move a couple of these individual points, the div labels, and we'll also move the Mokefire. You'll notice we've now created a new group over here called Group Graphics to our table of contents. So now stay with me closely here, because it's easy to mess this up, and I do all the time. Now what we want to do is we want to activate the frame. And so we can actually edit on the frame. And we go to graphics, because that's what we want to work with, and we go to the selection tool here. And let's go and select that. Notice how that now selects as a graphic. And so let's go ahead and move that over, let's put it up over here. So that's now our division 1 between these two division points here. And we'll move division 2 over here. And now this is getting a little crowded here, so let's move our Mokefire down there. And division 4 is now over here. And division 2 we'll put, oops, notice that you can also make it bigger or smaller because it's a graphic. Put it over there. That's a little too big, but a little smaller there. In any event, now we can clear our selection. Well, now this is a little crowded, so you spend a lot of time fiddling around with labels, but that's pretty good there. Let's just call that good. Once again, you know, we're not going to make the world's best map here. And the other thing actually about any emergency incident mapping is your goal is to get the map out as quickly as you can and have it as reasonably good. It has to have the information needed in there, but as I was once told, the S341 NIFC class is the standard class for fire incident mapping. And the guy there said, if you make a mistake, take out a marking pen and correct it. You know, don't get too bogged down in what you can do with a map, because especially Arc Pro, but also Arc Desktop, which I originally took it on, you know, has a zillion tools, and you can just spend forever making things absolutely perfect. And in some cases, you want to do that. You know, you're working at a company or something like that, and you want a really good presentation. So yeah, you've got to spend some time on it. But when you have a production map, you're trying to get out to search and rescue teams and get them out the door on a search, or fire crews are just standing out there in the parking lot tapping their feet, you want to get this out to them. And in any event, that's my excuse for not doing too great a map here. There's a lot of improvements we can make on this, but let's call this good. So now let's save, which we should have maybe done earlier, and go back to layout, and notice we now have a different bar here. We have our layout navigation bar, and let's close activation. Now you might want to replay this sequence. It's easy to get lost in this section here, so you know, back up a couple of minutes and replay it again, just till you get it down. And again, just remember that when you've got the layout tab and the layout tab here chosen, you have activate as a choice there. You also have bookmarks. You may remember we made a 1 to 24K bookmark, and that's that. And it didn't come out. Let's make the whole map 1 to 24 though. There we go. It's the size you want to print at. In the last few minutes here, we're going to put in the elements that you want your map to have. We want it to have, we want to put a legend in, a north arrow, a dynamic scale bar, and I'll show you what that is, a regular scale bar for distance, and a text box that'll show the acreage and the name of the fire and the date. And so when you turn this in, you know, follow me closely here. I will want those elements in here. Now when you're doing that, you want to look at your fire and look at the terrain it's likely to affect, which way it's burning, because you don't want to put graphics like a graphic legend or something over the terrain the firefighters are going to want to look at to plan. So a little harder to do here because we chose an active line all around except this one little section of what we're calling controlled line. So it could burn up to the northeast, to the south, and to the southwest. So you kind of want all those areas free, although maybe we could put in something here in the lower left. So now we go to insert, and let's start out with the north arrow. And when you go to the north arrow, you can do drop down, and you have a whole bunch to choose from here. I have a tendency just to choose the simplest one, and you could choose one that will show up against the background. So I'm just going to choose the basic north arrow there. And what you do is you get down and you draw it in, and then it comes up like that. So we're just going to place things here, and then we'll arrange them a little better. So now the scale bar, let's do, I like these black bars. Let's do an alternating scale here. And we'll fix this later. Notice it's kind of crowded, but we do kind of want it at a mile, even though that makes it, oh, there we are. So you grab it on the right there, and you stretch it out till it shows a mile. And let's take care of this now. It's a little crowded down here, and we can actually double click on it and bring up the scale bar elements that we can now edit just like a symbol. And here we can put it in miles, or if we wanted, we could put it in meters or US feet or whatever, yards, etc. And we can put the label position so it's above the bar, and we'll just stick with that. The offset is at 3 points, and we'll stick with that. But what we do want to work with are the division and subdivision breaks here. So we don't want it that busy, you know, just maybe a quarter and a half mile and 1 mile are all we want. So we'll reduce this to 2, and we'll reduce the number of little subdivisions there. Let's take that down to 2 as well. And so once again, we're just going for simple and basic. And if we wanted to, we could give it a background. So if it doesn't show up well, we could go for I don't know, turquoise. A little weird, but it actually shows up pretty well, so we won't even do that. And next, let's put in what we call an absolute scale. That's dynamic. That changes with the size of the map. Here we want to put in the scale of the map. So as you remember, it's 1 to 24K. So let's choose that, and we'll go in, well actually we'll draw it in over here. We can make that a little smaller. That's usually a pretty small little label, and so let's start arranging it. This will go up, this will go below it usually. And notice as I'm moving, the location bars show up, showing that it's centered there. Okay, next let's do a legend. So we're obviously still in format and insert, and let's do a legend. And we'll draw that in. And again, I'm trying to keep things out of the way, or at the very least keep I'm going to zoom out just so we can see where the edge of the map is. And we draw in the legend. And so let's try and zoom in a little closer on that. So for that, we want to go back to layout, and we'll just use the zoom tool. Oop, there we go. So that gives you an idea there. It's going to be kind of small. And there's some things we want to do here. We want to get rid of some of the extraneous stuff here. Notice that it says structures Tuolumne County. That's the name of the file. So we can actually change that by renaming the structures feature class to, instead of that long name, to structures. And once we get rid of that, it puts it into 2 columns. And you can also double click, and that'll bring up the legend adjustment dialog box. So let's save. We've put in a fair amount here. It would look bad if things crashed and we lost it, or if we started making a lot of mistakes and couldn't get back. Now it might be that we actually want a background here. We'll see what it looks like here. Let's use a light blue, and maybe a little too dark. This is one of those things that you fiddle around with and see what it looks like on the whole map, and zoom out a little bit here to get an idea. That probably works. Zoom in. Now a couple of things we want to do. We've clicked on the label box to highlight it and choose it, and we right click, and we're going to convert this to graphics. The reason is we've got things here we don't need, all other values. We could actually go to we could go down here to all other values, and we could highlight the label there, and we could erase that or just delete it, and then we could go to the symbol itself, and we could convert that to no color. Oops, sorry. To no color, and then that disappears, and then we have to get rid of the outline too. Notice how it converted to no color. Then of course we'd have to do the outline to no color, and then that would disappear. Apply. But the other thing we can do is, again, select the whole label box, right click, and convert to graphics. And so that converts every single label part in here into a separate graphic. And then you can choose it. We don't need the label, for instance, so I'm going to delete that. But because it's converted to graphics, over here in the legend, there are all of the elements that are converted to graphics. So I'm going to bring that back. So label is brought back. And then you can go down and find out which is the text of the label, and you can actually just click on it so it doesn't show at all. And we can highlight all other values, and we can just get rid of it that way. Or you can just delete it, one or the other. And let's also get rid of name under heading. So then we want to move points maybe just down a little bit, and fireline type down just a little bit, and move the box down. Well, there we go. Okay, once again, we're just moving through this, and that's not too bad. Oh, I'm sorry, then all other, highlight that, and holding down the, highlight that, and I'll just delete that, and the same with the line symbol that goes with it, delete that. So let's zoom out, see how we're doing here, make it a little bigger. Okay, closing in on it here. Now let's go back and look at the whole map here at side to side. There we go, the whole maps. We can now get rid of the symbology and fold up the legend. And more fiddling. Put that down a little lower, and that a little lower. Okay, that's reasonably well balanced. We can make the north arrow smaller, and as I've said before, you can just fool endlessly with this, but let's just get this out of the way. And finally, we are going to create a text box and put in the fire name and the acreage, and we'll call it done. So let's get rid of the symbology box there. Okay, save. Okay, last we're going to insert a text box. So back to insert, and let's do you have a couple of choices, a rectangle or a polygon. We'll just do a rectangle because that'll be easy to draw. We'll put that up here. And then notice tiny little text came up here. Let's zoom in so we can see it a little better. And let's go back to layout so we can move the whole map a little bit better. So notice we can see text there, which shows that we have a text box here. So let's go back over to select and double click inside. There we go. And let's call this smoke fire. And I didn't add up the acreage, but what you can do is you can go down here to attribute table and then add up the acres there, 1456 plus 169. So that's 1625 acres, and incidentally, the Moke fire, when it ended after about a week, was I think around 2,800 acres. Let's get rid of fire area, and back inside the some Moke fire, and 1625 acres, and let's put a date. So 3/11 when I'm videoing this, 21. And you quite often want to put in the actual time. So let's just say 1200 hours. And quite often you're doing maps at 11 or 12 at night. And this is for an IAP map, so let's put that up. IAP map, so incident action plan map. So this is the individual map put out to everybody. So here's a finished map showing the elements that should go in. The one we didn't put in was the coordinate system tick marks. I'll show you where you do that from, but that's another rabbit hole on adjusting that, so I think we won't do that for this class. But notice you've got the name of the fire, you've got, in this case, the agency, Idaho, and the acreage. Here's the datum, and the date, and the day shift. And so we have essentially that, although we don't have the datum. But anyway, operational period and time. You want to make sure all your legend or your labels are visible and easy to read. And here's your legend and stuff down here. Notice how they spread everything over the map to keep out of the way of the labels and the fire itself. And so for those of you who did the reading, this is from the GStop manual that where I assigned you just to do some short readings through it and their use of symbology. Okay, so we've filled in the basics here, the map, the fire, and acreage, date, and time. So let's make that a little smaller because we don't need all that. I don't need a little more here because what we're going to do here is increase the type size here. So I've already brought up the format text, but you can double click on format text to bring it up and lock it in place. And let's go over here to text symbol, and you can choose a typeface here. Let's make it a little bigger. Let's go up to 14, and then you apply and make the box a little bit bigger. And you can keep it left justified, but you could also center it if you wanted. That probably doesn't work very well. Let's go back. And you can give it a background here. So to change the background, we'll go over here to text. Although incidentally, you can also change the color of the text and so on and so forth. So let's go over to text, and let's go to the display, and the border, well, maybe, sure, black. Give it a little border there, and let's give it a background, and we'll do that blue again for that. Oop, that was green. Not very good, is it? Okay, well, that's ugly, but we'll go with it. Fool around and look for something. And no, it's just too ugly to use. Let's go for a lighter. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay, let's go with that, and let's zoom out to the full side to side here. Okay, that's not too bad. And so, once again, click outside. Let's get rid of the elements here. You know, I keep emphasizing that I want you guys just to do the basics here. and do as well as you can. A lot of this is just repetition. In a sense, it's hand-eye coordination, you know, where are the tools. And you've noticed me quite a bit moving the mouse around because I'm not used to where the tools are. I'm teaching this in Arc Pro now, and I'm spent 20 years using Arc Desktop 10, and well, all the way back to 3, and so tools that I'm used to are not there. So, like I said, repetition, doing it over and over again, and that really helps. And don't be upset when you mess up. You know, try and go back to the last saved point. If you have to, shut down and then open up, and it'll take you back to the last saved point if you're truly lost in there somewhere. Okay, let's print this. Let's save. And to print, you go to Share, and you go to Share Layout, or essentially Print, and lock that into place. These have a habit of closing. And so you can actually print to your printer, or depending on how you have this hooked up, but well, we want a PDF here. And the size is legal, so that's 11 by 14. Landscape, so we want to choose that. And down here is fit to paper size to make sure that it scrunches in just a little bit in case your borders here exceed what you can actually print to. And you'll get a warning if that's the case. And next, let's do an actual file name to name this from that Excel sheet I showed you earlier. So go into your Fire folder at the top level there and come up with your Excel spreadsheet and rename it to Moke Fire Arc Pro as your software tool. Choose IA. So you'll notice these are drop downs here, so it's an IAP map. Unfortunately, there's not 8 by 14 here, so we're gonna have to change that when we actually paste it in. It's in landscape, and of course your choices are portrait and landscape. It gives a time, date of operation. Well, that had an error there. Just ignore that. We're just going to go through and do it. Let's call it the day shift. Page size, same problem here. It doesn't give us 8 by 14. Portrait, we want landscape. And down here, it's map product file. And so we're doing as a PDF. So this is already highlighted. And copy. And now, when we go over to our print setup here, go through, and you actually can do it in black and white if you're planning on photocopying it, but then you have to go back through and make sure that the colors you've chosen are compatible with black and white shading. And check your output quality. Right now we've got it at best, and let's keep it there. And let's go ahead and print. This is going to take a little bit of time, so just sit back and let it run. Okay, I put that on pause. When it goes to save the PDF, it will take you to a folder to save it to. And so I want you guys to save it to your GS Fire Data folders, Incident Data, and Products. And usually what you do is, notice here is a folder already created, year, month, day. And so you change that to the date of your operational period and save it there. But we'll just save it to the higher level folder, which is the Products folder. So the save PDF file as, and so what we're going to do is we're going to paste in the the file name we chose, and then you go back here and change that to the 8 by 14 landscape. And why don't you put your another underscore after land and put your last name in there and first initial. So notice that we have the date in year, month, and day order, and the time, the name of the fire, 0915. So let's get rid of that. Although you don't have to if that stays in. I'm good. And let's go ahead and save. And I'm going to pause here till it's all finished. Okay, and in my case, the PDF comes right up, and well, that's reasonably good. And you know, you can zoom out and see the whole thing. And so that's what I want you to send in. And yet again, don't get too carried away. I do want the main elements here. I want a legend, I want a north arrow, I want a scale bar for miles, and a relative scale for you know, 1 to 24 to show that it's at 24K, and I want a box up here identifying the fire and the acreage and the date, and that's good. Okay, as I've said 100 times in the printed materials I send out, definitely send me an email if you're having problems. When I teach this in a classroom, you know, we're constantly going around the room helping people at their computer stations, so it's likely you'll run into bugs and things. Okay, thanks. We'll do sharing and upload to ArcGIS Online in the next video.